Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar tonight. And I'm really happy to see how many people are joining. So we will start very on time today because we have a lot of content, a lot of great content that we want to share, and a lot of really great speakers. So I'm looking forward myself very much to the session today. So I will just start with a very short intro to what the European Champions Alliance is and why we're here today. So just a couple of words of introduction. So we will record this video just for our own capability to make a short summary, and maybe also to put it available for everyone who has not been able to come tonight. Please stay on mute if you don't have to say anything, and if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. We can take the questions then afterwards. So we will have a short presentation of the European Champions Alliance that I will give to you. We will then present our new second version of our cybersecurity European Scale-up Mapping. Then we will have a couple of really great speakers that we're looking forward to and that I will present in a second. And then we will have a panel discussion with those speakers that will be very interesting, I think, for all of us. So thank you everyone for taking the time tonight, for being here with us and discussing this important issue for us. Thank you very much. So just a short introduction of who we are. So the European Champions Alliance is a non-for-profit initiative founded by a couple of entrepreneurs and business development experts. And what we want to do is build bridges between national ecosystems in Europe today. So we're very business development, marketing, and growth oriented. So very operational association that you can become a member, of course, and some of our members are also here today. So we are really happy for this. So our vision is basically to enable the technological leadership of European startups and scale-ups, and we want to support them to unleash their full potential and to create the European champions that we need in Europe and that we want to succeed on the European and also on global markets. So our mission is to harness this network, to make it work, to make events like we have today, and to get you all together. We are organized in focus groups, different focus groups, and in those focus groups we share knowledge, we share the network, we do actions together, we connect, we partner, we promote. So the importance is really to have all of those people in the focus groups. Tonight you're in the focus group of cybersecurity, but as you can see here, we have a lot of other focus groups that are already running. And if you're interested, or if you know anyone who can be interested in those focus groups, please send them to us. So we have Industry 4.0, Health Tech, Space Tech, Innovation, and very many other focus groups. So don't hesitate to come. So I just wanted to make a very short intro. If you want to know more about us, you can go to our website, europeanchampions.alliance.com, and also subscribe to our newsletter. And I will already give the word to Dominique, who is our head of the cybersecurity focus group, to talk about our scale-up mapping that we want to present to you very shortly.
Okay, thank you, Andrea, and thank you all to be here with us. Well, in this cybersecurity focus group, basically we do three things. We try to identify the European offering in cybersecurity, and one of the tools for that we have is our mapping, and I will be happy to present in a few words this brand new mapping version 2 that we have just issued today. We don't do mapping for the purpose of mapping things. We do it because we think it's an help to the cybersecurity European ecosystem that we want to help grow. And this is a link to our the second thing that we do. We try to develop exchanges between stakeholders. And to do that, well, we organize discussions, obviously. And so today, it will be one of these discussions with this key issue of data. And we are very happy because not only it's a key issue, but it will be covered by people who know more than myself about the question, because they are daily engaged on this field, and I'm sure it will be very interesting for all of us. And the third thing that we do is we try to let know and influence decision makers. This is the reason why a few weeks ago we issued a guide mainly for the attention of decision makers. Basically, the idea of this guide, and it's also the idea of the mapping, is to say, hello guys, well, the American offer in cybersecurity is interesting, but the European one is also very interesting, and it really covers all dimensions of cybersecurity. Just to come to this mapping, in July, we issued a first version of it. Since that time, we have carefully analyzed many companies because we knew that our first version was not totally good. So we analyzed almost 450 European companies. We kept only, I think it's 139 or maybe 140. The figure has changed every minute these days because we wanted to be sure that when we say this is a company which is really ramping up, or this is a company to watch because they are in early stage but they are delivering something interesting, we wanted to be sure. So 140 to be compared with about 100 in July, and out of which we have just more than 80 French companies, 52 German, and I think it's for the moment 3 in Switzerland, 1 in Netherlands, and 1 in the UK. To be honest, 1 in Netherlands doesn't mean that there is only one Dutch company interesting and active in cybersecurity. It means that we still have some homework to do. But basically what strikes me is that the offering is really structured. It covers all dimensions of cybersecurity, and it's growing. It's growing. This, well, many of these companies are growing. That's very interesting. So just to conclude, I would like simply to say, please read. It's an interesting document. It would be totally foolish to try to summarize it in a few minutes now. Read, comment, send comment to us, distribute it as widely as you can if you are interested. And also, of course, feel free to have contacts between these different companies. Well, the work was done by Nikaya, who is on probably on your screen now, and also by Ingo, who is in Frankfurt. Maybe Ingo, you want to complete what I have just said? Is Ingo with us here now?
No, I think he is not yet here. He will join a little bit later.
So I'm sorry, he won't be able to complete. Basically, what I would have liked him to say would have been some words about the criteria we have used. It's, well, one of the main criteria, of course, is figure. Below 100 million euros of revenue, we think it's a company that should be on the watch list. That is, we hope it will develop, but it's yet a very young company. And above, we have companies that we say these are worth looking at. So you can see there are many companies. The watch list below 1 million euros revenue. Again, it doesn't mean it's something not to look at, because, of course, among the watch list, you have the future unicorns of tomorrow. We don't know yet who it will be, but it will happen, we are sure. And of course, we are sure also for those on the other slide. Okay, maybe we should, Andrea, now we should give the floor to our first keynote speaker. shouldn't we? Andrea, we can't hear you. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. We are actually still waiting for our first speaker. So what I will do is I will present to you our speakers, and I hope that they will be able to join us in just a second. I will again share my screen. Just a second. So c'est pas la bonne. Just a second, I'm sorry. So I would like to present our speakers tonight, some of them that you already know, I'm sure. So Gilles, I'm sure he will join us in a second. So he's a serial entrepreneur and has co-founded, created, and successfully resold several companies here in France, and is also a shareholder in several startups. He's a member of the Competitiveness Commission of the Montaigne Institute, a nonprofit independent think tank here based in Paris. He's also the president, was the first president of the National Digital Council from 2011 and 2012, and is since then digital champion at the European Commission, and as such represents France in the Commission in charge of digital issues. So we're really happy to have him tonight. And our second speaker is going to be Michel Paulin. Thank you very much, Michel, for being with us tonight. So Michel is the CEO of OVHCloud and leading associate of Gaia-X. OVH is a French cloud computing company, for those who don't know them yet, founded in 1999, that offers VPS, dedicated service, and other web services. It's the largest hosting provider in Europe and the third largest in the world based on physical servers. Michel has spent most of his career in IT, telecom, and internet sectors. He was the CEO of Neuf-Cegetel, for which he made an initial public offering from Meditel and SFR. His appointment at OVH is part of the new phase in the development of OVHCloud, as he will oversee the implementation of the Smart Cloud strategic plan, aimed at consolidating OVHCloud's position as an alternative leader in the cloud sector. So very nice. Thank you very much, Michel, for being here. Then we have Matthieu Bonenfant. He's the Chief Marketing Officer of Stormshield, that is part of Airbus Defense and Space Cybersecurity, and that offers innovative end-to-end security solutions both in France and all over the world to protect networks, workstations, and data. Matthieu is specialized in information security and began his career at NetTask from 2001 to 2008, spent some years at Advance, a company that specializes in information security management, and returned to NetTask in 2013 and became Stormshield's Chief Marketing Officer in 2016. And then Bastian, of course, thank you very much for joining us today. He's the head of the Cybersecurity Division of the German Economic Council, so the Wirtschaftsrat der CDU. Before, he worked as a project consultant at APCO Worldwide in Berlin and as a Blue Book trainee at the European Commission. He's also interned at several embassies and institutions, including the German Academic Exchange Service. And Bastian is the incumbent chairperson of the Tokyo International University's English Track Alumni Association, the host and producer of the podcasts Bento Bureau and Flying Colors, and acts as a coordinating advisor and organizer of TEDx TIU. So thank you very much for our speakers of being here. I'm just going to see if Gilles was able to join us or not yet, because we might have had a problem with the link. I don't see him yet, so I would really like to ask Michel if you could start your presentation now, and then we will have Gilles do his presentation a little bit later. So Michel, if you could take the word right now, that would be really great. If you can hear me, you would have to unmute yourself. I'm just looking for Michel.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Michel, yes, we can hear you.
Okay, excellent. So thank you very much, Andrea. It's very difficult for me to try to replace Gilles. I don't know if I will be successful to do so, so I apologize already for that. Yes, my name is Michel Paulin. I'm the CEO of OVHCloud, and OVHCloud is a global pure player in the cloud industry. And we provide I mean, of course, any type of cloud solutions, hybrid cloud solution, private cloud, public cloud, and we have 31 data centers across the world. We have been ranked among the top cloud players in the world by IDC and Forrester, but unfortunately, and this is maybe a point, we are the only European among these top ranking companies. And we are absolutely convinced, and our ambition is to be able to provide and guarantee that customers can always have alternative solutions based on an open, transparent, and reversible cloud that protects customer data. So the question is, can the cloud be compliant with data sovereignty? And maybe first I will try to give us what is our definition of sovereignty, because there are many definitions of sovereignty. For us, what is not sovereignty is nationalism or practicism.
We actually we have tools here that give us are used for analysis. Mixed methods.
It seems there is. Hello? There is a sort of background noise. Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you without problems.
Yeah, sorry about that. There is I don't know, someone who is not on mute. So for us, sovereignty is not, as I was saying, any type of nationalism or protectionism. On the contrary, we do believe that a country, a company, or a citizen can really be sovereign when they have the freedom to choose, when the constraints which are put by the market, by the institutions, by the external constraints are creating a hegemonic approach which do not allow to exert its sovereignty. So for us, sovereignty is the capacity to decide and to have the freedom to decide. And definitely we believe today that, unfortunately, we need to make the diagnosis that in France, but also in Europe, we have now lost a little bit of our digital sovereignty. And I would say that the COVID crisis has tremendously accelerated the digital transformation, but at the same time, we need to discover that 70% of European data are already located in non-European clouds. And we know that some lockup strategies implemented by some players have created some monopolistic situation. And so the question of the sovereignty in Europe is becoming really a crucial point, which has been raised now by some institutions and political, such as the European Community. Thierry Breton has mentioned that several times. The Minister of Industry in Germany also, and also Bruno Le Maire in France. If we also want to identify what we do believe is digital sovereignty, for us, we believe there are two sovereignties. The first one is a data sovereignty, and the second one is a technology sovereignty. What are the differences and why we do this segmentations? I will start with the second one, which is technology sovereignty. What it means if Europe is able to have several technologies that they will have all the keys and all the capacity to master them. And we must admit that, unfortunately, for decades now, Europe will not be successful, and we will have lost many battles of technology, especially in the digital world. And as OVHCloud, we try really to compensate that in some domains, because we believe that if we look for the future, we have some battles we can win. We can win some battles in the software. We can win some battles in the security, and we discussed about cybersecurity, and Dominique mentioned that. We believe there are excellent solutions provided by European players. We believe also in open source. We believe in artificial intelligence. Today, the battle is not over. And we need definitely to start to be able to invest, and we need to have an ecosystem of players able to play this game, because it will be difficult, but the battle is not over. And in the cloud industry, we really do believe the battle is not over. And we need really definitely to continue to propose alternative solutions. And unfortunately, we have already some key, I would say, technology we do not master, but in the future, we need to be optimistic. And as OVHCloud, we really would like, with partners, European partners, to be able to continue to demonstrate that Europe can have a leadership in the technology sovereignty. The second one is the data sovereignty. And definitely, as I was mentioning, 70% of the data in Europe is hosted now in the cloud by mainly US players, and it's really a challenge. Because we and that was a little bit the question about can the cloud be compliant with data sovereignty? What does it mean, data sovereignty? In fact, we believe that the sovereignty can be qualified by 4 attributes. The first one is security, and we mentioned each cloud provider operating in Europe has to comply with the highest security standards, such as the top securities in Germany, in France, in Italy, in Spain, because this is very important. We need to guarantee the security for the customer. The second is the data protection. Europe, with the GDPR, has been very innovative, and I think we should be proud of what has been achieved by Europe to protect the personal and collective data. But at the same time, this is really marginal. Europe is not the majority. If you take what's going on in Asia or is going on in the US, data privacy, data protection is not at the, really well guaranteed. And therefore, we must, as a cloud provider, respect the local jurisdiction regarding the data protection, and especially in Europe. GDPR, CISPE, Code of Conduct should be respected. The third one is transparency. And it's vital for our customers to know exactly how, where, and how, under which legal status their data are stored and compute. What are the data flows? And there was a little bit of, I would say, debate in France about the Health Data Hub, about where the data are and where the data are moving around the globe. And this is really a key thing. It should be completely transparent. And reversibility. The cloud should not become a jail, even a golden jail. The cloud should stay open. It should be transparent. It should be an open ground guaranteed by the use of open source and standards with documented APIs, which allow the customer to have really the freedom to accept if they want. I think these key criteria of data sovereignty are absolutely important. And this is what we try to do with Gaia-X. So, because Gaia-X is not a cloud per se, it's not an offer. It's a set of principles that the European and especially the German, which were at the frontier first, and are now with the French, but there are many other players which are today associated to the Gaia-X, is really something which is important. This is a principle of foundation of Gaia-X, and everybody who is compliant with the Gaia-X principles is welcome. But they have to follow the strict rules of security, data protection, transparency, and reversibility. And we see that Gaia-X can be and should be a very excellent European example of an active ecosystem. And we are very pleased to see that many companies, we are a founder of Gaia-X, but many companies have decided to be associated, even sometimes some Americans, but they will have to prove that they really follow the principle of Gaia-X. From a policy rules, for example, perspective, but also be able to invest in the concrete solutions which follow the strict rules of Gaia-X, and especially the transparency. So today, as a founder and as a promoter of the Gaia-X and part of the Gaia-X board, we try to really continue to propose these policy rules. We are also made a strong partnership with T-Systems, where we want to show that today we can propose next year a fully compliant open stack, open source solutions based with European technologies that will be completely compliant with the Gaia-X principle. So this is what we believe are concrete examples of what we can do with an European willingness ecosystem model that we will promote alternative solutions. At the same time, we might be surprised that OVHCloud has made a partnership with Google Cloud on Anthos. At the same time, what is interesting is, for me, it's completely compliant with the principle of the data sovereignty. Why? Because the model we proposed with this partnership is really to completely apply the strict rules of data protection, of data localization, of the fact that nothing will be sent to the US, that we are protected from the Cloud Act, and the model will be completely disconnected. So we give, at the same time, the best of the two worlds, a strong technology, but which will strictly apply the European standards and really our value in terms of data protection.
We don't hear you anymore, Michel. Your phone has switched on mute. Thank you.
I don't know, maybe there is a sort of tempo, or I don't know. So, sorry about that. To conclude, as a pure player, we truly believe that our mission and our participation to Gaia-X, but to any other type of European, I would say, initiative, is really to promote the sovereignty as we believe, an open, trusted, reversible, and transparent sovereignty. And definitely we believe it cannot be achieved without an active ecosystem. And really, I thank the European Champion Alliance to invite me, because I think it can't be alone. We will not be one player. This is the opposite values we will promote. We promote that we should collaborate. Today, we have launched 5 strategic partnership programs, and we have a strong ecosystem, nearly of 3,000 companies which are across these partnerships with startups, with system integrators. We have launched another programs about what we call the open trusted cloud, targeting the software application editors, but also the SaaS provider, where they are compliant with the Gaia-X principles, but also the fact that it's an open and trusted and reversible cloud. So this is really something we are pushing, and we absolutely believe that together we can, with OVH, but with others, able to create an ecosystem of European players able to guarantee at the same time the sovereignty of the data, but also the sovereignty of the technology. And that's how we believe that the battle is not over, and together we can win for this really compliance with the best practices of sovereignty, thanks to Gaia-X, but many other initiatives. And we are very pleased to participate to some of them. And I know that European Champion Alliances, I've seen some logos, a lot of them are, and we are very happy, are in this ecosystem with OVHCloud, but others. So this is very exciting. So I would be optimistic. The battle is not over. If we want to continue, because our values are right, we believe that protecting the privacy and the, I would say, citizens' data is something which is valuable, and we will do everything as a European cloud provider to be part of this great adventure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michel, and thank you again for being here and taking the time. And we're very much looking forward to shaping this with you together and with OVH over the next month and years. And thank you very much for also your vision of this topic. So I'm very happy that we have now Gilles with us. He was a little bit late, but it was our fault, so not his fault because he had a wrong link from us, but we're very happy that he's here now. Gilles, I already introduced you before you came, so people already know who you are. And we are very much looking forward to your presentation and to your thoughts on data and sovereignty. You've worked very much on this topic already, and we are very, very happy that you're here and can share this with us today. So please, the word is to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm really sorry because I will have to rush, given that I'm supposed to be in another conference call. And obviously I had a very wrong URL, so I couldn't join you on time. But you know, just to I would say complete with what Michel, who was actually brilliant, just said. I believe that there is a quite interesting momentum to consider for Europe and for data in general. And I'd say it's probably the mixture of several things that have not much in common. You know, one sure thing is what is now called Schrems 2, the fact that for some legal consideration, the European Court of Justice denounced this privacy shield agreement that basically enforced the exchange of data in between the US and Europe. And what the bodies that supervise this agreement is now saying is that what should replace this privacy shield will be extremely conservative. in a sense that you won't be able to send any data in the US that is not encrypted before being sent. So therefore, I believe it could turn on to become a very strong opportunity for people like Michel and OVH and other of that kind. And I'm not sure that it's really well perceived by both the European state members as well as the private sector in general. So that's really strong. Everything that is now coming from the regulators is basically goes in the direction of a completely different agreement than the one we had before. The second thing is the architecture of systems in general. We are entering into a phase which is not only cloud, but which is cloud and edge. And there is obviously an understanding from the Thierry Breton that there needs to be a new step, political step being taken to protect the, I would say, corporate and industrial data that are untouched for the big players at this stage. So, and on top of that, I believe that there is a third aspect, which is probably taking off of the European scene with very good companies, especially in the analytics and AI fields in general. So if you take those three aspects all together, I believe that there is a chance that we could see a shift from all this data being hosted in the US to a certain amount of this data being geared to local players. So that's something which pushed me to say that, to me, what is probably a key in being winning in these technological wars is the ability of certain players, especially the US and China, to synchronize 3 or 4 different bodies, which are the corporations, large traditional companies, the startups, new players with innovative concepts, the research, public research especially, which is making a link in between all these types of players, and the regulation. And to that game, Europe has been lagging behind. And I think that this type of soft power is certainly making a huge difference in China and in the US. And I'd say that maybe not to be too long, I'm very sad that the stimulus package hasn't perceived the importance of heavily investing into ICT technologies, research in ICT technologies, and basically making a very, I would say, hard cut into this research. The last thing which I believe is also to consider is the fact that the sovereignty is very much tied now to data in general, and that we're entering into a phase which is for a big chunk of our sovereignty linked to the fact that we are able to modernize the military system and to turn it into something which is not so much about planes and artillery or whatever, but mostly into cyber defense and cyber offense in general. So that was, I just wanted to sum it up, to make it very short. Maybe it's not very articulate in all aspects, but these are the key things I wanted to say, because I'm obviously obliged to leave you now. And thank you again for taking the initiative of gathering all these extremely interesting people and for the overall initiative.
Well, thank you, Gilles, for your time and for being here. And I hope it's not the last discussion that we have, and that we have still some more discussions in the future with you and Michel and Matthieu and Bastian. And we're really looking forward to this. And thank you for being here, for sharing your considerations on this. We're very keen on hearing you. And I know that you have to leave now. So thanks again for being here. We will keep the conversation going, and thank you also for supporting us in the European Champions Alliance. That is a very small initiative, but we try to, move it a little bit forwards, and we're happy that you push a little bit with us as well as the others. So thank you very much for your engagement tonight with us.
Thank you again, and let's keep in touch.
Okay, thank you, Gilles. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks. So I'm really happy to now give the word after those first very interesting and inspiring talks from Michel and from Gilles to our German counterpart with Bastian. Very happy that you're here tonight. So how to convey the importance of sound data policy and protection to SMEs. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts, Bastian, and I will just give you the word, and I'm happy to hear.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I think Elmar and I are actually going to do this together to steer up the conversation a bit.
So
hi, Elmar.
He's the expert. Hi, thank you. Hi, Bastian. So of course, we'll do that together. I'm the one asking questions. You're the one as the expert answering it. So my first question would be, what's the reason for the rising importance of data protection that you do see? Because we all have heard data protection is that important.
Yeah, I think that's a quite essential question, isn't it? Everyone here has understood that data protection is important, but I think the more vital question is actually, how do we use this data protection now in Europe? Many countries in the world, particularly the US and China, are looking at Europe saying that we have a strong data protection policy in place. And this is something we could use as a pillar to kind of establish some of our digital sovereignty that most of our European countries, as well as the EU itself, is looking for. We are currently in the process of defining what our digital sovereignty actually means in the world. And there I find data protection a particular part that could be played in the world. At the same time, I need to say, however, that I think it's not about protecting the data itself. It is not about protecting data. It is about protecting the individual. And I feel like that is kind of missing sometimes in the conversations that we have here, or the discussions we have, because we want to protect the person behind the data. We're not protecting the data itself. And that's something I would like to steer up a bit in the questions as well, and later on in a discussion we might have.
Right, absolutely. We are not doing it just because of fun, protecting data. And when we are technicians, then we, of course, focus mainly on the technical level of that. And it's the individual we are going to protect. But when we talk about individuals and individual data, who do you think owns these data, or what's your view on that?
Right. According to the GDPR in Europe, I think the data definitely belongs to the individual, right? It's defined by that. And I think I agree with it. I mean, if an individual decides that a service or company is supposed to erase their data because they don't want to offer it anymore, then that should definitely be in place. It should be erased. However, I also need to say that this data is information, and this information is relatively useless if it's just there, right? I mean, a good example for you in order to understand that a bit better is the Corona warning app. I think you have it everywhere in Europe now. Technically, that is just Bluetooth data, some kind of location data, and it's just information of each individual. But the value that is added by the company and the service that is providing that app is so important at the moment to kind of fight COVID-19. And then therefore it has become so valuable, right? The services and companies use the information of the individual to create value. It is put into a value chain that can be used in order to bring our economy forward. And that is also something I believe that sometimes is not really realized potentially. But of course, there is a certain responsibility by companies, for example, to inform the users or their customers how the data is used. That's definitely true. They should spread awareness, and vice versa. Customers should be aware when they provide the data, how that data is used, right? There's, I think, kind of a trade-off in that regard, where basically both sides should be aware of how the data is handled and how it can is basically put into place or used. But in the end, if a user or a customer doesn't provide the data, then it's just information, and it's relatively useless information. It helps, though, when a company or service is behind it, let's say a smartwatch even, that uses the data that they've collected in order to give you valuable information. And that's something I find sometimes really difficult in the GDPR, for example, to argue, because the GDPR is focusing so much on protecting data that it becomes, or has become so difficult for companies and services to actually collect the data they could use to bring our economy forward.
Right, and when we talk about data protection, and we heard it before also, we mainly focus on the big enterprises. We talk about Google, we talk about Amazon, we talk about Microsoft, and all the big ones we know and that are really in the center of the discussion. Nevertheless, there are a lot of small and medium-sized enterprises around. How do you feel about them? Do you think this is also a topic that they should cover?
Right, yeah, absolutely. Very good point. I think we always look particularly at the big companies in America, right? You've mentioned a few, Google, Amazon, Facebook, etc. I assume everyone here in this webinar is using either a Mac or a Windows PC. So there you have it. But each and every company has the same responsibilities there, right? Each and every company has the responsibility to protect the data of the customer. Don't use it in any kind of malicious way or give the data away, for sure. On the other hand, I also need to say or argue that SMEs might have it a bit more difficult than the big companies, right? And I find that the GDPR is kind of even favoring that, because for big companies, it is relatively easy to put someone or set up a whole team that focuses on data protection policy, privacy policy, etc. While compared to the small and medium-sized enterprises, they will have much higher burdens, let it be financially, mostly financially, to get actually the experts into the company that would allow them to comply to the GDPR. Now, I have to say they did an incredible job, I think, from what I've seen in Germany and in France, anywhere, I think in Europe. But I think they have, compared to other companies, such as the big ones, who are currently the monopolies most of the time of the data that we use day by day, right? And it's quite hard compared to the big ones. And there needs to be some kind of shift that really supports the small and medium-sized enterprises here. That's what I believe. And there, I think, should kind of the discussion steer. That's what I would say.
So first of all, thanks a lot. I do have multiple other questions, so we have later on a lot of time to ask them and go through it in the discussion later on. But I think first of all, we are running out of time. So thank you really for being here and giving these answers.
Yeah, thank you. And for every participant, feel free to shoot your questions. I think I've given a couple of opportunities to steer the discussion as well as the other speakers. So.
Well, thank you, Bastian and Elmar, for this this short discussion, and looking forward also to the panel discussion in a couple of minutes. But first of all, we have Matthieu from Stormshield, who would like to share some information about how and where does the European offering stand today on data protection. So Matthieu, thank you very much for being here, and yes, please unmute and go. We don't hear you yet. Yes.
It should be okay.
Yes.
Hello.
Perfect.
So, good evening, everybody. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share the stage with all these great speakers. So I will have a talk about how to protect data and which solutions could be used for that objective. But before answering to this question, it's just important to remind that data protection is, first of all, a process. Data protection is a journey and should not be considered as a one-shot approach. The first step of this process for an organization that would like to start the data protection journey is to identify its main data sets and to assess their criticality, the risk level related to the organization activities and to the applicable regulation. And one of the main questions here is what would be the impact if these different data sets, and especially the most critical ones, would be either stolen or publicly disclosed, made unavailable, deleted, or illicitly modified. The second step is to define a policy, just a set of rules that simply state who can access to these data sets. As an example, I would just say meeting minutes from the board of directors are probably limited to top managers. All the consolidated data on salaries should be restricted to the HR department. The third step of this process is to locate where the data sets are stored, exchanged, or used. It can be on workstation, on mobile devices. It can be on premises with local file servers, messaging servers, intranet databases, and so on. It can also be, and we had a lot of insights regarding that, on cloud-based application or workloads. And here, as it was said before, the physical location and the origin of the provider has to be taken into account when we do this localization of data. It can be also on USB keys or any external device. So it can be in all of this or only a part. This question of localization and residency of data is more and more a concern as organizations are losing from a direct control over the data with the prevalence of cloud and mobility. And then only it's possible to define the most appropriate controls and protection measures based on the criticality of data sets, on the dreaded impacts, on the defined policies, and where the data sets are located, transferred, or used. And for sure, in order to address this complexity, we have to rely on a mix of measures, as unfortunately there is no silver bullet solution on the market that can cover everything. And there are several ways to protect data, as summarized on the following slide. Sorry, Andrea, if you can. Thank you very much. So here you have just a summarized view on how can data be protected. First of all, it can be obvious, but the different components of the underlying infrastructure should be properly protected. It can be endpoints, servers, workloads, network devices, applications, on-premise, but also on the cloud provider side. And to enforce the policy that we talked about previously, relying on a centralized and secure management of digital identities and certificates is key. And we can consider that as the foundation for an efficient data protection approach. To prevent unwanted access to data, solutions that enforce and filter accesses could be required, like privileged access management, cloud access security broker, identity and access management, secure data exchange platform. Firewall could also be used for that purpose. In order to control the transfers that are made with data or data exfiltration, data loss prevention solution can be used, cloud access security broker also. UEBA, user and entity behavior analytics, that can detect abnormal behavior done by users with data, or data marking can be used. And there is an alternative approach that can be used to prevent unwanted access and to prevent unwanted data control. That is encryption. And encryption can be done at the data level. It can be encrypting files, encrypting data blocks, encrypting fields that are used in SaaS applications like Salesforce, for example. Data protection is also about detecting breaches and leaks that already occurred in order to react quickly. And for that, we have solutions around data leak detection, secrets detection that will scroll the darknet, scroll public source code on GitHub, social medias to identify such leaks. Data protection is also to remediate and recover when an incident occurs. So for example, when you have a ransomware that encrypted a set of data, then of course having efficient backup systems or archiving solutions is required. Privacy can be enforced through pseudonymization, tokenization, encryption technologies. And one thing that is often forgotten into the life cycle of data is to destroy it properly when the data is deprecated. And this can be done with data shredding or crypto shredding. This global representation is probably not exhaustive. It was just a summary, and I'm probably missing some really interesting new technologies, but these give a broad and global view on the different techniques that can be used. Based on this representation, we can see that the road of the data protection journey could be long and could be seen as complicated, but the most important thing is to start the journey and to start it small. So a company that wants to engage in the data protection journey can focus its effort on a limited number of data sets, on what is the most important or the riskiest, I would say, and to extend progressively. As said before, data protection has to be multi-layered and based on an ecosystem of several solutions. And the good news, as far as we have this discussion today, is the fact that here in Europe, we have a rich, trustful, and diverse ecosystem of vendors and providers that could help to address the global data protection subject. And that's why also this, the cybersecurity mapping is a perfect tool to identify the right solution, to address needs, and to ensure also the sovereignty of data that we have talked a bit before. According to Gartner, the IT intelligence and research company, the origin of vendors has become a criterion of choice for buyers of cybersecurity solutions. This means that geopolitical risks are now taken into consideration in purchasing decisions. And so here, European vendors have a leading role to play and can answer to this new concern from European companies. But unfortunately, on the other side, the European cybersecurity offering is suffering from a fragmented market in Europe. European cybersecurity solutions are often supported with a really local preference at country level. This is something that we have seen historically on the market. But if we want to develop a sustainable, consistent, and attractive cybersecurity offering at the same level of what is offered on the other side of the Atlantic or in Israel, we need to scale and we need to change the scale. We need to think with a European dimension and a European mindset as vendors when we develop our activities, when we develop our partnerships, as buyers when we choose for a solution, but also as investors in order to provide larger fundings to emerging technologies, emerging vendors, and also, of course, as regulators and public organization to drive the demand. And the mapping is definitely a good support to develop this global European view. That's it for me.
Thank you very much, Matthieu. And I think we have the same view and the same vision of how we can build this ecosystem in Europe. And thank you for sharing this with us tonight. Stormshield is, of course, an important player in this ecosystem. And this is why we're very happy that you are here tonight with us. And we can keep on the discussion now, because we will now switch over to our panel with our two moderators that are also part and members of the the European Champions Alliance. I will just give a brief introduction to them as I did for the other speakers, if you agree. So Luc Dursault, thank you very much for being here and for being one of our first supporters also of our initiative. And you know, it's always important that you have people who say, okay, you're doing the right thing and keep on pushing. So just a short intro to Luc. So Luc began his career at the European headquarters of Alcoa, the aluminium company of America in Geneva, where he worked in the marketing department for the aerospace and armament markets. He's an entrepreneur at heart because he then pursued his career in the sports industry, what I discovered, where he developed the Mistral windsurfing brand and the Reflex water ski and the La Croix snowboard brands. I'm very excited about this. And then he co-founded the telecom operator Future Telecom, which he sold to SFR in 2007, and founded Wooxo in 2010, so a French software solution dedicated to the protection of computer data. And in August 2017, in partnership with Cyprien Roy, he acquired Atempo, the European leader in data protection from the American group ASG Technologies, and then acquired Cineway, creating the Atempo-Wooxo Group. So thank you, Luc, for being here tonight and animating this panel with Elmar, who we have already seen tonight, and who is the CEO of eperi GmbH, which has been founded in 2014 and is a leading IT security company in Germany with many years of experience in data security for cloud applications. Elmar is a founding member also of the Allianz für Cybersicherheit, so the Alliance of Cybersecurity in Germany, and is actively involved in current cloud security discussions in the efforts to make the IT world more secure. And in recent years, Elmar has been established himself as a valued consultant for the cloud security issues at state, federal, and EU level. So really excited that you're here, both of you, and that you can animate this panel. So please go ahead and start the discussion.
Okay, so Elmar, I have a bad news. Being the last two ones to get on stage, I think it is our responsibility to keep the audience awake for the last mile. So therefore, Elmar, I hope you don't mind if I ask you very straightforward questions.
Of course.
My first question would be, data protection is often seen as a business barrier and competitive disadvantage. Is that true?
I, of course, absolutely do not agree, because obviously cybersecurity becomes a business value generator and a very big competitive differentiator. It really moves away from the cost center view and the standard insurance and is much, much more than just the standard SAN costs. It really generates a value for the organizations. And that is something that also resonates in the Gartner 2020 CIO survey. They called it using IT to gain a competitive advantage. And they asked a lot of companies around, and 88% of the people who participated in this CIO survey said cybersecurity is the major topic for really a competitive differentiator. The good news is also the highest amount over AI even. So 52% said AI is a differentiator, and 88% said, well, cybersecurity is. So we are in the right sector. And the reason is fairly simple. Cybersecurity is the basis for all the new technologies that you see. It embarrasses all the different technologies like AI, like 5G, like blockchain, digital twins, you name it, everything there, because everything is based on trust. We also do have a couple of chat questions. So also one question that I would give back is, when we talk about Europe and all these topics, is it too late for Europe to get into the race with countries like US or China because they are technological far advanced? What do you think?
Good question. I've asked you a straightforward question, so I think I owe you a straightforward answer. In my opinion, it's above all a sophism brought forward by our economic competitors to lead Europe to surrender before having fought. That's my opinion. The USA and China have won the first data battle with B2C platforms, and the way they did it is collecting huge amounts of personal data under conditions that are still being debated, if you see what I mean. Since then, laws have changed. And the recent cancellation of the Privacy Shield might well be a real game changer for me. The cancellation of the Privacy Shield is just a legal expression of this deep yearning of citizens and professional organizations for this cloud of trust. At Atempo, we are convinced that this need for a new digital deal thus goes far beyond the borders of the European Union. Throughout history, if you remember, Europe has demonstrated its ability to define the legal framework for the physical spaces such as land, sea, and air to guarantee the sovereignty of states. We firmly believe that its vision will be instrumental in framing the digital space and providing citizens and organizations only the best of the digital world. Now, let's consider another point. I mean, the volume of data doubles every 18 months, and the large majority of them will come from B2B activities. Collecting, protecting, hosting, and managing them in Europe will give us a decisive competitive advantage. Europe ranks in second place, just after China in terms of data production. Any data scientist will tell you that he'd rather have the biggest database than the best algorithm. At least 80% of the data is stored today in data centers and 20% on peripheral objects, smartphones, communication objects. This proportion will be reversed within the coming years, which opens also a wide field of opportunities for new players. So, Elmar, as you can see, the data war is far from being lost.
Right.
So, can I ask you another question then?
Of course.
What are the new, we have been talking about those open fields for new potential players. What are the new activities that you could raise out of the recent changes on data protection regulations?
I guess it's fairly simple. As the topic says, it's about protecting the data. And that is really a mind shift from protecting only the IT systems to protecting the data itself. And we also had a question in the chat from Timo who said, well, what is around, do you want to build a wall around Europe for all the data? And that does absolutely not make any sense. And even inside Europe, we want to share data. It's not only to be totally protective and not letting data out. It's all about being able, and that is what I also have as a point for data sovereignty. We also need new security solutions. We need to be able to define which data do we want to keep private and which data do we want to share. And this is our responsibility on the one side and also our free will that we want to keep some data just private. So simply saying the one who encrypts data also needs to have access to the unencrypted data. And when you think about that, this means the cloud provider who offers an encryption, that is absolutely not sufficient for GDPR. And that is also what the Schrems 2 discussion shows. So why Privacy Shield is not there, because companies must encrypt their data before sending it to the cloud, to the US cloud, especially if they want to make sure that no one is able to get access to these data, and not let the cloud provider encrypt the data, because that is absolutely not sufficient. Because only really being able to stay in control of the data makes sure that the GDPR compliance is achieved and that the cloud provider has never, ever access to the data in the clear. And in consequences, the UA data protection, the data protection officers, all the country data protection officers, the foreign data protection, everyone agrees that Microsoft 365, for example, is not compliant with GDPR. You also can see all these messages on eperi.com/GDPR where we all listed them. And it's absolutely clear. US providers are not allowed to access the unencrypted data at any time. And there are simple technical solutions that do exist. And that does not mean encrypt everything. And yes, it is only a step in the right direction, because there was also a question in the chat from Timo who said, well, is it enough? Because there are also ways of perhaps getting access to our data, because we are using tools from Microsoft, Zoom, others, and it's all about the responsibility and being sure what you do and that you do have the right tool set. And there are European tools that you can trust, that you can easily use to exactly get access to the right messages. And that would also think that is a question that we also should discuss. So how can the ECA help exactly in this area?
Okay, good point. The European Champion Alliances activates synergies between key stakeholders and leverages the network for strategic and operational support to European scale-up and SMEs to accelerate their journey to become European champions. In the B2B data battle, multi-specialist alliances can turn out to be much more effective than generous global players such as the GAFAMs or the BITX, especially to tackle vertical markets. Focus groups animated by European Champions Alliance, such as health tech, collaboration tools, or cybersecurity, also help us broaden our view, think different, because we exchange ideas with a very wide range of actors. ECA, I would add, also helps European tech providers gain exposure through, as you have seen before, European mappings, BIOS guide, white papers. So we all gain exposures. And I firmly believe that ECA will be, is instrumental to consolidate the European digital sovereignty and what we call this new digital deal.
So yeah, absolutely. So as also Bastian in the chat mentioned something quite important. So perhaps Bastian, you would like to give us a view on that, not only in the chat, so you also can unmute yourself and everyone else too, to have really a discussion about that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think you've raised a very important point here. I have to say, I take that point from someone I've listened to quite recently from the company called Here Technologies. But he raised a very important point that the race in Europe is always kind of seen as if it's lost compared to China and the US, but I don't actually think so. I think we might lack in a certain way when it comes to data analysis, like putting data into use. But producing data is actually very good at that. We have all the industry here in Europe. We have all the companies here in Europe, big companies as well, from the automobile industry to Airbus to, they're all here. But the issue is that we're not putting that into use and analyzing it, using it for our values, for our AI, let's say. And instead, what we do is we give it most of the time to the big companies who already sit in America. So, I think there could be a nice discussion. And I feel like we're definitely not we're lagging behind, yes, in that particular part, but we are still in the race and we can still make it if we turn our shift our mindset a little bit. That's what I would say.
Michel, as a tech player, maybe you would like to add something. I see you moving.
No, I agree with Bastian. Yeah, Luc, it's a pleasure to see you by video. But no, I agree with Bastian. I think the battle is not over. As was mentioning at conclusion of my presentation, is that I think we have some domains where Europe has very strong assets. We have among the best talents. We have a strong startup. And I absolutely agree that what Gilles has mentioned about what he called about the three attributes about what China and US, it's clear that I think we need to create in Europe an ecosystem which will leverage our capacity. And this ecosystem is a sort of mix of things about, we need institutions, we need the public, the governments, the local authorities, because public money is key and should be there. And it is done for the other regions. The second is everything about research. Universities. The NASA in the US is very important. Stanford University has a huge private funding to help startups. It's also large scale-up to scale. Big companies. There is an obligation in the US to buy American. It's the Small Business Act. This is also a driver to help to raise some companies in Europe, but also funding all the venture. And these ecosystems are very fruitful. It's not by hazard that the US have won some key battles of technology during the past. I do believe it was because the ecosystem was very fruitful in the sense they were very active by creating all the conditions to create something which was, I would say, very innovative and very efficient. And I think Europe has to recognize that they were not very good at that because the public money went mainly to the US. 70% of the IT infrastructure is today investment is made by the public institutions in the US players, 70%, and the rest is Chinese or Asian. It's marginally. Luc is participating to an initiative in France where we ask that the public authorities should spend a minimum to the European players, because this is the best way also to finance innovations, to finance growth. So I think the battle is not over. I think now the diagnosis is done. I really do believe that everybody has understood that the data is something which is strategic. There is a huge value, and some of the GAFAM has made immense fortune thanks to the value. It's becoming strategic. It's becoming also ethical. And now we need to be sure that we put in place all the regulations. We put in place all the ecosystem. We need to put in place also the, I would say, push politically, but also technologically, and I am absolutely convinced also financially, to be able to make this, I would say, European virtuous ecosystem, which will stick to our values, GDPR, Gaia-X, and things. And I agree with Gilles that I think the Shrem 2 is a nuclear bomb that we do not know exactly what will be the consequences yet. And it's a huge opportunity because it has been legally clear that today most of the players which are having cloud data in the US are in an illegal situation. And I think it's a fantastic opportunity for the European players, such as OVHCloud, but like Luc, and we work together. We're in the same ecosystem, but there are other players across. And I do believe that this is really a unique chance, and we need to seize them, and we need the support of the public authorities. But also we will, as entrepreneurs, will be also very willing to invest, to continue to innovate. And thanks to that, I think we have some battles we can win as European players.
Absolutely agree. I think very true points, and you added a very important point also to the discussion.
We don't hear you anymore, Michel. We don't hear you anymore. Your phone is.
Okay.
Now
sorry.
Now you're back again.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry.
So yeah, you absolutely add a very important point here, the part of investors and the money, because truly, if we want to get into a race, we do need money, and that means investors are also asked to participate. And there is a different understanding of investors in Europe and in the US, and the investment behavior is truly different. So as one of the really experts in this area, as a long time, is Ingo there. So perhaps you also do have a view onto the investment angle that is also quite important.
That's one of our weak points. We also have one strong point. I think that we shouldn't forget that we have reached excellence in mathematics and computing school, engineering schools. And I think it's one of our challenges to be able to scale up those engineering schools to foster our ecosystem, because we need more and more data scientists and engineers and developers. So I think the excellence is there. Now we have to scale them up to have more people.
And may I, I'm sorry, also, I think you're absolutely right, but at the same time, I don't know if you've seen the debate in the US, not Senate, it was the equivalent of the Deputy Assembly, about the fact that there are debates in the US about the fact that some GAFAM are canceling, are reducing innovation due to the fact that, in fact, each time there is a competitor which is starting to emerge, immediately they buy, because they are so financially strong, they buy it to kill it. And it was a debate about or when they don't kill it, they absorb it and they integrate it in their own. And that was a discussion about, for example, TikTok, where even the US authorities have decided to, I'm not trying to defend TikTok, but to say, okay, guys, it is Chinese, it's creating a sort of a threat to Facebook, and so immediately there is a reaction to kill them. So I think it's interesting to see that even in the US, there is a worrying debate emerging about the fact that some players have enough money to kill innovation, And I think in France, we need, in Europe, we need really to believe that we have the talent, most of the top class artificial intelligence studios and labs are in Europe. Even GAFAM in Zurich, in England, in France, in Germany, they're already investing a lot because we have excellent academics level. And I think we need to be aware that, yes, we need to protect them. And we need to be able to have the capacity to help the company to scale and to have enough money to scale. And we need to create venture capitalists in Europe, which are able to scale this, I would say, ecosystem of very good companies emerging. A lot of startups in Europe, and there is no reason why they should be immediately, I would say, acquired by big giants. No, we need to promote them and we need to help them.
Yeah, maybe I can just give, as Elmar asked me, one topic, because I agree completely with Michel that I think the key issue is critical size. And if you see, and that's maybe one driver we see behind ECA, if you have little leaders in France, little leaders in Germany, and it's cozy and you survive, yes. But you will not be able to attract sufficient funding. That's at least my experience. So developing European companies with more critical size will also give access to other types of investors. And that's a little bit the point that we have been, I mean, at least for me as being active in the ECA from investors' standpoint, that we see and that we would like to encourage. I mean, becoming early European players for startups or even for SMEs, it's important, is key, or maybe consolidating into markets where you have little players. So you are one larger player will actually give the possibilities to invest further and not lead to early acquisitions. I don't know if you just saw the acquisition of Instana. IBM has acquired a very nice company in Germany. And it's always the case that I would say the fish is very early catched by the big sharks. And that's to a certain extent not good. Yeah. So I agree, but it's also from ECA, I think it's the question, how can we promote that this happens, that really cool companies actually tackle very early these European markets?
I also agree on that. Here in France, for example, on the cybersecurity market, we had two quite successful companies like Vadesecure or Centrio. They wanted to have European funding with more than 50 million euro funding, and there was no European funding able to put that money on the table. And their only solution to get this amount of money was to go on the other side of the Atlantic. So that's definitely something we have to solve, because this is a structural issue in Europe.
Absolutely, and I think it's also some very important topic that we see in the chat. Hendrik mentioned just the acquisition from Slack, bought by Salesforce for $27 billion US by 600 million revenue, and there is a multiple that if you calculate it, that is nothing a standard German or a European investor would easily pay out. So this is something very special for the US, and that is exactly the ecosystem problem that we do see.
May I just say maybe one thing that is important, because in all of the time that we're working on this project of the European Champions Alliance, of course, we've discussed with very many people, and I think that the problem is not the problem, but the subject is very complex. So there are a lot of things to take into account. There's questions on regulation, there is a question of funding, there's a question of exit strategies, and what we try to consider as a question of lobbying, but what we try to concentrate in at the European Champions Alliance is a very operational topic basically is how can we help companies to work more faster together, to expand, to grow in Europe? How can we tear down walls and problems and culture and trust issues that we have between our countries and build the bridges that we need between the companies? And this is really what animates us here at the ECA. So I think that the question that Ingo asked in the chat, I would like to pick it up, and I would also use it as a transition into our networking part of the evening. Is what do you think from our speakers that are here? So Luc, Elmar, Matthieu, Bastien, Michel, also to see how do you see that an association like us, like the ECA, which is very young, so we have about 10 months now, and we are proud of what we have achieved until now, but what do you think are the formats and topics, and how can we support the ecosystem as an association to do this? So what do you think are the good formats, are the good topics, or what would you expect from an association like us, who are really convinced as a European organization? So we are not French, we're not German, we're really European, and on what we should do and how we can support this this endeavor. And I would maybe like to start with Bastian, because we haven't heard you for some time, and I was really curious to hear what you think.
I think that was the hardest question of the evening. Well, I think I pick up with what Mr. von Feucht also said, if that's okay. I will connect it. I think what you can do as the ECA is definitely spread awareness. I think an association is fantastic to spread awareness about these kind of issues, right? And perhaps you can also pick up the point he mentioned, that data is the new oil, which I would like to say that I do not agree with. Because oil is already very valuable. It has its value of just being oil, but data is not like, it doesn't have any value at all. It has value when, as I said earlier, companies and services put value into it. You can have tons and tons and tons of information, what basically data is. But in the end, what do you do with it? It is not valuable if you don't put it into use. And that is what I think we need to understand in Europe. And that's something you can bring forward as an association towards the governments who have put a GDPR in place, which is also actually harming most of the small and medium-sized companies. Bringing it back to funding. Maybe it's not talking about funding, but it puts a lot of pressure on small and medium-sized companies to put data protection policies in place that would otherwise give them a huge fine if they wouldn't follow it. Compared to a big company like in the US, it's not a big deal for them to pay $100 million or whatever if they've done something against the data protection policies here in place in Europe. It's not a big deal. It can be $1 billion and it wouldn't be a big deal. For a small and medium-sized enterprise here in Europe, however, that's a different story. It will definitely be a huge amount of money, and that's why they put so much effort into discussing how they should use the data they acquire for their customers. And that takes so much time effort away, it's so much cost away, because they have, of course, they need the experts, that they in the end can't innovate. It really doesn't allow them to work freely. I know I've touched about lots of different points now in these few sentences that I've brought across, but spreading that kind of awareness, I think, is something that needs to happen in Europe. And I think the ECA might be the perfect way to do so, particularly since you have so many members who are also small and medium-sized enterprises who've done actually a pretty good job in scaling their business across the Europe and international markets. So that might be something I would add to that or say. Hope that's satisfying.
Sorry, thank you, Bastian. Yes, of course. Michel, what are your thoughts on this?
How you can help? I think there are different axes, and I will just before I will comment. I disagree a little bit with what has been said about the value of the data, because I agree that the most important is what you do with the data. However, I do believe that the artificial intelligence is changing a little bit the framework about the value of the data, because more data you have, more data you are able to collect, strong your artificial intelligence studios will be. And so there is also a value to have, I would say, a huge, a different level and sources of data, because even so, the value of the data is created by how you use it. However, when you have very strong players who are able to collect immense number of data, it creates a competitive advantage in the fact that they have a very diverse type of data to feed their artificial intelligence studio. So that's the reason why I will mitigate a little bit to say that also data intrinsically has also a value now, and it will become, are we able to have a platform to collect enough data to enrich our artificial intelligence studio? Because otherwise, if you're only a niche player, it will be very difficult to make your artificial intelligence studio to learn more and more. You need a huge amount, a paramount amount of data to be able to have to create also a way to create value by using the data. But I finished with this point. I think what is always interesting is to continue to, I would say, first put the diagnosis. Even so, I think the diagnosis now is known, especially in Europe, and to also to ask all the players to take their responsibility as a startup, as a scale-up, as a big company, as a local authorities or as institutions. I do believe that also you have a way to push everybody. We as a company, as entrepreneur, we believe we have a responsibility, for example, to try to use, I would say, first, European solutions in our own solutions. I don't say exclusively, because I do not believe that should be protectionism. But at the same time, in our framework of suppliers, we have, if we have to make a choice, we prefer to take European players in our technology because we believe it will be a sort of solidarity. And I think as an institution, you can help to raise the fact that everybody should ask the others to help them, but also we should have the responsibility to help the others.
We don't hear you anymore.
We don't. I mean, I've finished.
Okay. Thank you, Michel. Yeah, we will definitely try to do it, and we're happy to have you on board with us. Matthieu, what do you think about this? What do you think can an association like us do to push the topic?
I think that the thing that is really interesting is the fact to create the feeling of being European, because we definitely have to change our mindset in terms of technology. If we want to have an ecosystem that is attractive, we need to have the good offering. It's not just a question to choose a product because it is a French product, it is a German product. It's because the product is at the right level. But in order to have the product at the right level, there is a question of scale and to have a dynamic offering. And we cannot rely only on our local countries to develop these strong actors and strong vendors. So we need to be European, to think at the European level, European scale. And this is something in which the ECA can bring value, to just generate the feeling that we are European, and to continue to leverage the awareness in Europe regarding the challenges that we have to face, like the one we discussed today. We will have to fight, because there was I don't remember who was putting that in the chat, the fact that even in our major industries, or even in public organization, we are sometimes a bit too much naive regarding the situation. And so it's more than important to continue to educate and to bring awareness regarding the major challenges we have to face.
Thank you, Matthieu. Luc, Elmar, I will hand over the word to you again.
Hello. Sorry, Andrea, I didn't get you.
I said I hand over back the word to you again for the for your thoughts.
Okay. You want me to start, Elmar?
Of course. Feel free.
Okay. In our opinion, we need an organization to take over this challenge and to federate the different players, the different stakeholders, as we said before. So our main expectation is to take this challenge at the right level. That means at the minimum size. And according to me, the minimum size, the minimum level is the European level. It cannot be a national game. It's at least it has to broader all over Europe. So I think that's the European Champion Alliance has proven able to gather forces from different countries. It's one of a illustration today. I think we should reinforce this with maybe some southern countries as well. And maybe one day we also have to launch a bridge over the Mediterranean Sea and to attract stakeholders from Africa. I firmly believe that we have a common destiny with Africa. I firmly believe when I see the alliance that has been realized in the Pacific area, that we need to achieve a critical size and that even Europe is too small today. So our destiny, in my opinion, is common. So that's one of my will to try to open up our movement, the ACA, to the ACA in Africa.
Yeah. I think as every organization, it's really important that people get together and share their minds. For example, we as eperi, when we raise our voice, it's just one company and this voice is not really heard. And in contrast to that, if we all together discuss about topics, first of all, for each individual company, it's very important because we always get new knowledge, we always share our minds, and we have a ecosystem where we can talk in a trusted environment with having different shareholders. And there are different people from different parts of the ecosystem that we are all around, and that's very important that we have this unique opportunity to talk as friends and not only as competitors, because we are on the same market, but that does not mean that we are automatically competitors. That means that there are new relationships that can be built. We can learn from each other and do not make the same mistakes than others have done. And that is a real big value, because that is exactly what the US companies have done to be that big. They just found it together, they put themselves together, they have seen market opportunities, and they are targeting together the customers and building joint opportunities, because at the end, the customer wants to have a solution and he does not want to have a technical solution. He wants to have a solution for his problem. And that is something US companies have very much focused on, building solutions, even if it's needed to have a joint technical solution. Who cares? They build a solution that works for the customer and solves a customer problem. And in Europe, what we see very often is great technical solutions, but not really bringing the value to the table that the customer wants to have, because it's unable to express it, or it needs joint solutions, because especially cloud security, for example, that is not one solution that you can use to secure your cloud, because there is no one cloud. There are several topics that you need to solve. And that is something where it needs to have joint efforts and to put really a couple of companies together to solve these problems for the customer. And that's exactly what I think is a real big value. And having these workshops together where we discuss, where we have an open and clean room for these discussions, that's a great value.
Well, thank you, Elmar, and also thank you everyone for taking part in this discussion that we want to continue a little bit now in the networking. I just want to pick up the last comment of Julia, and I'm so happy that you are here. So one area would be to educate policymakers about technology and its challenges. For example, in Brexit talks, we talk more about fishing industry, but no talks about data, tech, and AI. So I totally agree with you. for the moment, we're not talking to policymakers really in the ECA. We're talking especially between us companies and how can we, solve the challenge of creating European champions. I think it's another step that could be an option for us. And we hope that with everything that we do now and also the content we create, we will receive some interest from that perspective, and that we can really also feedback the ideas of our members to policymakers. For the moment, it's not what we do, but why not? And we can really take it into account. And I think it would be really, really important. And what I would propose to you all now, because I see that time is flying again, when you talk about interesting topics, it goes so fast, is that we continue the discussion in a short networking session. I would just create some breakout rooms, and we take maybe 20 minutes to get to know each other in smaller groups. When we go into the groups, please just unmute yourself and unmute your camera, and just have a small exchange about the key challenges that we have and the solutions that we can find inside the ECA. But before going to the networking, a really big thank you to our speakers and moderators, Luc, Elmar, Michel, Matthieu, Bastien, and also Gilles, who already left, for your time and for being here with us. And I'm repeating myself, I know, but I'm really grateful that you took the time, because I know you have so many things to do. So I will create the rooms. We can have continue the discussion. If you have questions about the European Champions Alliance, please contact us. Look at the mapping, distribute it, use it for your means. And also, if you have any questions, please come to us, and we're happy to work with anyone and with, talk about all those issues that are very important to us. So let's continue the discussion, and thank you again to our speakers, and have a great evening after the networking. And we'll stop the networking at about 7 latest. So let's go.
Thank you.